Hi, welcome to Woke Women. My name's Adriana. We have Millie and we have Randa. What anxiety is the definition for you?
Much when I can feel physical symptoms happening as well as racing thoughts. So I'll get my heart will start beating, my hands will get sweaty, my mouth will get dry. And that's when I know, okay, yeah, I'm starting to feel anxiety now. And yeah, it's up to me whether I'm going to allow it to blow up into a massive attack or if I'm just going to sit with it and just feel it. So yeah.
Okay, so it's a physical sensation that you
Yeah.
get.
I
Okay.
I experience physical sensations from it.
Okay, that's really interesting. And Millie, how about you?
I think for me, obviously, if someone's struggled with anxiety, it's been a part of their life for a long time, and you become aware of it as you experience it interfering with different parts of your life. And for me, when I started to notice my anxiety was when, big things started happening in my life, big changes. Change is a big thing for me, and then I feel a bit unsettled and a bit out of control. And when I feel like I'm losing control, I get kind of the heart racing, and I feel a bit like I'm about to cry all the time and just very fragile. And yeah, like I said, all surrounding large moments of change. So
Okay.
this whole COVID, in and out, everything's happening, and I've got no idea what's going on, and no one can give me a straight answer. It's a large trigger for my anxiety, I would say, and probably for a lot of people, I would assume, because um, a skill that is taught to a lot of people with anxiety is to, map out, make sure you know everything that's going on, so there are no surprises. And you can't do that when it's a global pandemic and no one knows what's going on. So yeah, for me, it would be kind of a racing heart and a bit of, I can tell when it's going to happen if I've got a busy period coming up, and some things that I don't know, hard to control, I would say.
So it's the anticipation, maybe, or like
Yeah,
a
like it sounds weird to say, but it's kind of a similar feeling to excitement, but the negative side of excitement. I'm anticipating something happening, but it's not a positive thing.
yeah,
So
it's a like a worry or a I don't know, like a nervousness.
yeah, I guess nerves. You feel a bit of bubbles in your tummy and a bit like of a racing heart, get a bit hot and flustered, things like
Okay.
that.
So there's a physical sensation, maybe for the both of you, but for me, I get like a mind chatter. So for me, I'm not so much the sensation in the body. For me, it's this constant mind chatter where it's almost like, now this sounds crazy, that I almost have this other voice telling me this constant race of thoughts. They're not even feelings anymore. It's just this constant thought train that just doesn't stop. And so for me, that becomes like an anxious worry. And so I have to filter out what are the real thoughts. And then I have to sort of differentiate these thoughts patterns and then go back into the physical body. So for me, I have to bring myself back into the physical to get some grounding in my anxious moments. Otherwise, my mind, I can really hear it loud, very loud. It's like a volume that goes up. And I'm just like, turn the music off, no, and so I really have to go back down and wind it down. And by the time I wind it down, I then get a little bit more grounded and, settle into the body. And I feel like that's why I do a little bit, maybe too much exercise sometimes. I'm exhausted. My muscles are sore right now, but I try to feel my body. And I think that's why exercise is so important to me, because it gets me away from here.
I find that so interesting. The different types of people experience it differently.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends. I'm not. I know the physical symptoms do happen, and I feel like for me, that's when I'm on the verge of maybe having to the way of going towards maybe like a slight panic. Whereas for me, it's more like a constant. Yeah, but it's a lot less now than it was, say, a few years ago.
I know what you mean with sort of the voice getting in a way. Kind of your rationale is challenged when you're in that state, because I know for me, my mum always gets mad at me because she goes, Millie, you're piling everything. You're making it seem like such a big deal, because what I do is in my mind think about everything I have to do, everything I've got to go through, every single thing that's happening in the next year and a half, things that are happening in my future that I can't control, everything. And I know that that's not going to help me. And I know that thinking about it all at once is going to be overwhelming. But I think that like rolling thought is the part that takes over your rationale. Like underneath, Millie is like, no, that's not the way to think about things. But there's nothing you can do about it other than use your coping strategies. And you said for you is exercise. Everyone has a different way of dealing with it, I think. I mean, for me, I can't do anything. I have to just lie down and take a moment. And if sometimes expelling the energy is really good, but for me, I don't know, I need to lie in a dark room and just be alone for a second.
And if that works, then it works, and I know maybe, Randa, you have a different journey of finding your grounding. It's that breath, isn't it? That I saw it on Instagram, so just reframe out. It was literally 15-second clip. So
no, that's all good. So yeah, if for me, how I try ground myself, there's a few different ways. But some of the ways are I physically will touch my body and like remind myself, hey, like I'm here, like I'm in the present moment. That's my form of grounding. Or like if I start to feel the physical symptoms happening in the racing mind, I'll actually stop what I'm doing. Even if I'm at work or whatever, I'll literally go into the bathroom and I will just breathe and just bring myself to the moment. Yeah.
I think breathing is a really big part of anxiety. I'll get a bit geeky now, but from like a scientific perspective, just filling your body with oxygen, supplying your brain with enough oxygen to like increase that rationale. Because a lot of the time when people are anxious, they hyperventilate if you're going to have a panic attack. And then you get a bit woozy and you can't think straight. So slowing down your heart rate and making sure that your like nervous system remains as calm as possible helps your brain to understand, hey, I'm actually okay. And this is just a disconnect between the neurons in my brain and actual my body,
Yeah, that's a really good call out, because when I try and calm myself down and I'm breathing, like I'll actually touch my heart and tell myself, hey, like you're safe. Nothing is actually happening right now, as well as the breathing. And it really, really does help.
It works. And I feel that's similar to what I do. I get my heart rate up when I'm doing exercise, so I can really feel it. And of course, I really do love to meditate and do deep breaths. I think deep breaths, you can take that anywhere with you. That's
definitely.
And getting outdoors, like sometimes going outside, even if it's just in the backyard, I feel like that's really important for me on my personal journey. If it's just looking up at the cloud and just doing a bit of daydreaming.
Yes, I do the same literally with nature.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It actually helps. Yeah. Sorry?
So I was going to say the sound of the wind and the birds. And it can't be that bad if that's what the sky looks like.
Honestly.
And sometimes that anxiety journey, or even just mental health in general, it's almost like it blows everything up in our head to what it can be. And I know there are some truths there. So I know that there are some triggers, there are some truths, there are some things that, as people in general, individually and as a whole, that we need to work through. And that's why I feel like together is always better. I feel like alone can be so hard sometimes, and together is always just better. And knowing that everybody has a similar journey, the trigger might be different. Yeah. So the trigger might be different for each of us, but the journey remains very similar in its trait, in its presentation, what then grounds you back. And so, Millie, you say lying down in a dark room. I love it. I think that's amazing. I think that's really great, because sometimes slowing down is also what we need. We sometimes go too fast,
Yeah, I mean, it took me a long time to get to the point where I could let myself just kind of lie down and be okay with not functioning for a little bit, so I can get my heart rate back to normal and feel a bit more me before I go out. Because, in the past, and I think a lot of people do this, you ignore anxiety because people dismiss the symptoms and think, well, everyone's nervous, everyone's got bad days, and what is what I'm going through compared to what other people are going through. But I think letting myself acknowledge, and in the past I would just continue working, and then I would burn out, and it would be a whole big thing, and I would have panic attacks and everything would fall apart. But I think what I've learned with COVID as well is you can acknowledge that your situation is better than other people, definitely, but that doesn't mean you dismiss your own discomfort. And I think dismissing that discomfort and neglecting your own mental health is what ends in this whole blow up. So letting myself lie down and take the time I need and kind of almost be selfish in that respect is, I think, really important on my journey.
Absolutely. You said something really, really wonderful there, what you just stated, not being able to validate your own, what you're going through. I think that's super important, because I know from parents, it's that's so-and-so, they're not doing, and there's people in the other side of the world that are going through war, or they're not, they don't have food, and it's almost like a guilt that you feel for feeling the way you do. And I think what you just touched on is something that I think is getting broken by generation to generation. Acknowledging your feelings is something that we're having to put into place for this society coming, or the generations coming underneath us.
I think, with what I'm studying at the moment, there's a lot of hardship that people are going through in the world. I mean, human rights is a really confronting issue across the globe, and there are a lot of incredible young activists that are doing wonderful, amazing things. But I think a common theme with a whole bunch of people is that we're not validating our own issues, and it's ending up with a lot of shame and mistrust there, because the whole politically correct thing means people can't acknowledge their own pain, their own discomfort, like I said before. And if you can't sort yourself out, how on earth are you supposed to help someone else and understand where they're coming from? I think, obviously, if you talk to a generation like our parents or grandparents, the whole emotional awareness, emotional intelligence, and mental health understanding and validation is not a part of any family life. I mean, probably some close families, but generally people don't let themselves. And I think the understanding that it's okay to do that is a really big part of mental health today and young people, because how can you be in such a high stress environment and say it's okay for me to be like this because people have it worse? I don't, that part doesn't commute to me. That makes a bit, it's not really where my mind goes. Is I need to validate myself so that I can help other people, right?
You need to, go Randa.
No, I just wanted to add on that that's actually a big part of my journey as well. For a long time, I completely invalidated the way that I felt. And in turn, it made me think, what's wrong with me? I shouldn't be feeling this way. My life isn't that bad. And that made the anxiety grow even worse, because I would still go out with friends and completely ignore what was going on in my body. And that's completely neglecting who you are. And it's a bit of a lack of self-love and self-trust for who you are as a person, and everyone's trauma is valid, no matter how big or small it is, literally, because most of your trauma happens from childhood, and something as little as your parents yelling at you can be trauma as a child. So all trauma is valid. And once we can accept that our trauma is valid, no matter what it is, then we can start to heal, the mental health and the anxiety and everything that's going on.
So it's acknowledgement, isn't it? And that's what I'm here. It's acknowledging what it is, and then sort of validating it. And then it's a acknowledgement, validation, and then the next step would be the healing process. How would we, if we were to nut it out right now, how would we get from validating that, yes, I have a mental health issue, and then from that, where would the next step to bridge onto healing, what would you say that bridge was for maybe people that don't know how to get from A to B? What are some of your thoughts or experiences in A to B, or if you're in between A and B?
What I would say is it's a continuous journey always.
Yes.
You can't cure anxiety or mental health. You can do things to help you cope with it, but I think it's a constant, it's a maintenance. I'm thinking of strategies that I can do my entire life to minimize the impact of anxiety on my life. So for me, it's been understanding and validating, yeah, of course, and then also kind of letting go of a bit of that control, because that's where the anxiety starts for me. And you actually helped me a lot, Age, when we were talking about kind of letting a bit of that responsibility for that control go.
Yeah.
And I actively think, it's controversial. Everyone has a different way of dealing with it, but faith is a big one. And transferring a bit of that responsibility to the people that, or the person that looks after me, that looks down on me and protects me. And I rely heavily on my support system in my family and also in God, in talking to them about the journey as well. And I guess it sounds a bit rambly, but my main thing I would say is continually acknowledging that it's not going away, and that I need to look after myself in order for it to be maintainable.
Yeah, that's amazing. I totally agree. I think it's something that it is an ongoing. It's like because you don't know what happens. That's the thing. You don't know what's coming up. So like you said at the beginning, there's COVID, there's things that happen that you're just like, whoa, shut down for 2 weeks. Great. But you do, it's a maintenance work. That's awesome. And you, Rance?
Well, if I was someone that, just started feeling mental health and I wanted to start on the journey, and pretty much what I would do is I would seek professional help. And that's what I did, counseling, psychologists, even holistic healing.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that I did that really helped me was actually not identifying myself with anxiety and seeing it as an emotion that arises, not something that is inside of me all the time. It's just something that I experience, And that really, really helped me not have so many anxiety attacks so frequently.
So you took yourself outside yourself.
Yes.
Basically.
And pretty much, pretty much observing who I am and saying, this is just an emotion. This is not who I am.
Yeah, that is really awesome.
Human emotions are a part of life, and every emotion comes into mental health, some more than others, anxiety, sadness, anything. And I think understanding that you are not anxiety, you have anxiety.
Yeah. So that's a process, and that's what you're saying, Rand. You're saying you're going through the process of the experience. Just say, like, I'm experiencing going to a party. I've experienced the party, but then when I've left the party, well, there's no more party anymore, is there?
Yeah.
I've gone back home.
Literally.
I love that. It's a really, really good analogy, and it's a really good way of not taking it too deep down, is it?
Yeah, and like I don't dim the light on any emotions. Like all emotions to me are okay. Like I don't see anxiety as bad, and I don't see happiness as like amazing. Like they are all just a part of the wave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. So that is detachment. And that's one of the things that I had to learn pretty early on, that I was very attached to things. It wasn't that I had wanted control. It was more that I had really huge attachment issues to maybe people around me, to stuff, to things. So I really had to let go of even the attachment to myself. I had to let go of.
I love what you're saying. Literally, I agree. And I resonate so much.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't easy for me though, Rance.
Yeah.
Because, I was very attached to my family. I was very attached to people that came into my life. I was really scared of losing people. I was very afraid of different things, but I never admitted that fear ever. I was always like, I'm the tough chick, and I'm the, and I was to a certain degree, but I had to go through these things that I sort of kept to myself. And only when I overcame those detachments is then when I could stand in a room and sort of be confident and going, well, if you're here for the moment, you're here. And if you're not, it's okay too, because I'm going to love you. But then if you need to leave, I'm still going to love you anyway from a distance. I don't know if you girls have felt attachments at all.
I think attachment goes along with control for me. Big part. I mean, I think Randy mentioned before childhood trauma, things like that. Even little tiny things that happen when you're young, you can't comprehend it, and you don't have the ability to be like, this is one thing happening right now. I didn't expect it, but I don't know how to deal with it, and it's not going to happen forever. Is a skill that you learn when you're older. So letting go of that understanding is a really, really hard part for me. Actually, the COVID pandemic is hard for me because I am kind of finishing uni at the same time that COVID's like winding down, hopefully. So there's a lot of things happening at once, and I'm really trying hard not to pile and put too much pressure on myself. And again, I guess that attachment to a life that I had assumed my whole life, as a child, you have a vision for what your life is, being attached to that person who's not even me. Like, I haven't been there yet. I've got no idea who I'm going to be in a year. So yeah, that attachment, again, for a big thing for me, for the COVID control, everything. But I would say if I was an outsider looking in, I think professional help is also, like you mentioned before, really important, and there's a lot of shame surrounding it, not so much now, but older generations. So when young people go to support systems, depending on how supportive your family is and how much understanding they have about anxiety and mental health, you might not be encouraged to seek that professional support, which is really important because these people study it. They know what goes on in the brain scientifically. And I think that's a large part of my journey. And I would encourage anyone, if a friend came to me and said, I'm feeling this way, I would say, I can help you as much as I can, but I'm not a professional. So I think you should really seek that support as well.
Totally agree. Yeah. I think it's really important. Like you said, Rand, I've seen many psychologists, counselors, holistic psychotherapists, all of them.
Same.
All of them, literally.
But they really help. And like, Millie, I like so agree. When my best friends come to me for advice, or they're just venting and they're feeling some sort of way, I'll always give them, to the best of my ability, the advice that I have. But I literally will always say, and you should also see a professional, because they were so significant in my life. Like, they helped me so much. They're such a big part of the journey, and you're so worth the investment, honestly.
I think once, it's the hardest thing to start, but once you're there,
Oh,
you've broken through that wall
yeah.
and you allowed yourself to get this help, and you're almost proud of yourself because you understood that was a really hard thing for me to do, but I've done it now, so I can keep doing it and keep looking after myself.
And I would say not to get discouraged if the first person or the first counselor or the first person you meet doesn't feel like you want to open up to them. That's okay. I would always say listen to that vibe, because there is someone out there that you're going to click with. And if that first person discourages you in any type of way, go to the next person. You know, there are so many different counselors and psychologists and people out there to help, and they have different personalities and a different connection. And, you know, you might click with someone and really feel like you can open up, and they can go on that journey to give you the tools with you, you know? So I would say not to just be discouraged, because I do hear, you know, I didn't like him, you know, or I didn't like her.
Yeah.
Okay,
Or like, I had a bad experience.
yeah.
But like, the thing is, like, I so agree with you. Like, I've shopped around with counselors and healers and stuff. And there's been like counselors that I've really vibed with and everything, and we've just come to a stop. And I've found like a new counselor, even though if we're working on the same thing, it's just that we've finished our course with this counselor and now I'm going on to a next one, you know?
Well, I think you can't assume that you are feeling safe with every single human being you come into contact with. That's like assuming that every friend you make is a friend for life and someone that you trust completely. Obviously, you're paying for these people, so it's a bit of a different situation. But beyond the professional relationship, there always needs to be a bit of kind of like a chemical connection between you and the person. And I can't trust someone who I don't. For example, for me, if someone doesn't smile at me, I can't trust them. There's no way I can talk to them. I feel uncomfortable. So, everyone has different things. If someone was smiling at someone too much, and they might think, oh, that's a bit weird, they're smiling at me. So everyone has a different, a different way of approaching. It's like shopping for friends, but, professional friends.
Yeah.
I would say a question that I get asked a lot when people find out that I have anxiety, because it's something that you keep a bit personal when you first meet people, and me at least, some people are really open. People ask, what does it feel like? And how long have you had it for? And I think answering those questions, having the ability to say, I'm not really comfortable answering that question, is a really large part of being a young person and having mental illness. I think acknowledging that it's your boundaries and you have no responsibility to include anyone you don't trust within that, even if that is your family or your siblings or anything. But then also on the flip side, having the strength to, if someone doesn't respond in a way that you find supportive, say, that wasn't really the nicest thing to say, that didn't help me, I don't think I'm going to talk about this anymore with you. Having that strength to stand up for yourself is something that I struggled with, still do, because I don't want to upset anyone, but you have to look after yourself. So.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's a really good point there, Millie. Your boundaries are super important, and something that I guess I had to learn the hard way. But yeah, boundaries are your protecting mechanism, aren't they? They're your way of letting other people know that you're not okay to be in my space. This is my circumference, out of the circle. And like, I think that's super important when you're not even when you're going through stuff, what you'd like to share and how you'd like to share it. I love it. It's very strong. You hit home, Mills. You hit home.
And it's really freaking funny that you just mentioned boundaries, because that was the question that was coming into my head.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that was like, I want to really speak on that. So if someone asked me, like, how do you hold boundaries? if you're someone who experiences anxiety or mental health, boundaries are really important. I see boundaries as a form of self-love. If you are feeling anxious and you have plans with a friend and you know what, you can't make it, you're not feeling the best, boundaries are something that you can say, such as, hey, I'm not feeling too good, I'm not going to make it. Or, hey, I'm not up for a phone call right now, I'm not picking up the phone. Stuff like that. Like, boundaries are really, really important to help you stay in check and feel good.
And so it's based around anxiety, which I think is a bit of a theme, which is fear. Fearing the unknown, fearing the anticipation of what's next or what's to come or what's my future like. There's a fear in between that sort somewhere. It says, does a tough woman need to have no fear?
No. Fear is a part of the journey.
I think for a long time, there's been the assumption that fear is weakness. And I think that's a really negative way to look at it. And frankly, if you look at it from the perspective of overcoming fear is strength, then there's no issue. Fear is, as a woman, I think it's a bit different. I think there's a huge gap between being, feeling able to feel and acknowledge fear as a woman than as a man. And absolutely, I don't think strong women need to be fearless, because I think being fearless is a relative term, because everyone has different levels of what they find scary and confronting.
Yeah, and the more often you're faced with fear, then right after that is the growth and the strength. And then you come across fear again, and then you grow from that, and then there's strength. So, like, fear is welcome, honestly.
I love that. So fear is in the car, but it's not driving.
No, mate, not driving.
Not driving.
But you're an ally. That's all right.
An ally.
Because I know after you, there's something amazing coming. So,
right? Okay. There's a whole theoretical framework. Seek discomfort, because following discomfort is strength.
Yes.
Fear
amazing.
Is discomfort. But once we come past it, we've learned something new. We learn from our mistakes. It's a big part of growth, is being scared and wary, but also overcoming that.
Yeah.
Very nice. So fear is welcome.
Future. Strong people don't have to be fearless. Strength doesn't come from just being fearless. Strength comes from every single part of your body, every single part of your mind, your emotional intelligence.
Definitely.
Working on yourself. I would say that living with anxiety and acknowledging that is being fearless, but it doesn't mean that we don't get scared.
Yeah, I've found strength through fear, as ironic as that sounds. Yeah.
So it's a paradox, and I love that paradox. It's a beautiful paradox. Yeah. Strength through fear.
Yeah, really, really enlightening conversation, I would say. If I were a young person scouring the internet trying to figure out how to deal with my emotions, I think an episode such as this one would help me a lot. So thank you.
Awesome. All right. So thank you, Millie, for joining us this evening. Thank you, Randa, for joining us this evening. Please like or share or subscribe if any of this feels this may be a positive part of your journey. And we will see you next time on Woke Women. Bye for now.